Bandwidth provided by Recursive Squirrel Interactive. Visit them on the web at recursivesquirrel.com. Episode 649, One Really Bad Week. October 11th, 2021. It's time for this week's edition of the BeanCast, a weekly discussion about the news and issues facing marketers today. I'm your host, Bob Norton. Thanks for joining us. Facebook had a really bad week. A whistleblower testifying to Congress, an update that took down the entire empire, and in the middle of it all, advertisers are wondering whether its reach is worth the trouble. So tonight, we'll discuss the Facebook dilemma. Also, the pros and cons of NFTs, the push against ad creatives working for big oil, the impact of the Twitch hack, plus this week's Fair, Fail, Foul. That's the lineup. Let's meet tonight's panel. Thanks for joining us for this week's BeanCast. I'm Bob Norp, and with me on the panel for this evening, we start with the CEO of Twit.tv, Ms. Lisa Laporte. Lisa, you're back again.
I'm back, and it's great to be here. Thanks, Bob.
Oh, you're welcome. Now, next up, he's the Chief Marketing and Innovation Officer at RPA out of Southern California, Mr. Tim Leake. Hi, Tim.
Hey, Bob. It's great to be back as well. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. And finally, we have the Director of Experience Design at an undisclosed location. We'll just leave that as it is for now. Ms. Jarelyn O'Donnell is here. Hi, Jarelyn.
Hi, Bob. Thank you so much for bringing me back on.
Oh, yeah. Glad that you could. For those of you who don't know, Jarelyn had a baby, and it's just like those kind of things take up time. So glad that you came back. Glad they got you back on the show. Well, let's jump right into the topics. And of course, we're going to start the show off with Facebook. They saw revenue plunge 70% week over week during the outage that they had earlier this week. Francis Hogan testified before Congress and rattled a whole bunch of cages. And overall, they saw a decline in their stock price. Advertisers are questioning whether or not they stay involved with the platform. Of course, they will, but that's beside the point. Facebook and as many companies have had a just terrible, terrible week. But the question is, Tim, what, if any, impact is going to be a result of this? I mean, or is Facebook going to be impacted at all because of any of this?
You know, it's funny, knowing this question was coming up, I had this weird sense of deja vu because I've been on the show a handful of times and always there's something going on with Facebook. And it's always...
Well, I mean,
it's going to affect them in the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. It's just like, I don't want to cover Facebook as much as I do, but Facebook dominates everything in advertising right now. I mean, it dominates digital. It's dominating even over TV at this point, I think. I mean, TV still generates more revenue, but, you know, it's just like the impact of Facebook is so much more important to the advertising mix. So we got to cover it.
It really is. And I think this week is, you know, arguably different than most of them, though it's, you know, not unlike whenever there'd be another Trump scandal saying that this one's worse than the other ones. It feels like this one's worse than the other ones. And there's two sides of it. Of course, you know, the outage and the fact that, you know, that has a direct bearing on revenues of what I assume are mostly smaller businesses that are reliant on Facebook for advertising for that day. That's too bad. It's horrible. But that's unlikely to have a huge impact on the future, to be perfectly honest. I think, obviously, the bigger thing is going to be, you know,
and thank you for correcting me. Thank you for correcting me. At the beginning of this intro, I totally messed up the intro, but 70% plunge in revenue came from one of the companies that does business on Facebook, not from
a single company.
A single company saw 70% dive in their revenue, and that's just like I totally screwed that up. But I'm glad you got it right.
Well, and I'm sure it was for one day. I imagine, you know, they made it back I'm sure it didn't bounce back. I mean, it came back, but I don't think it's one of those things where they saw a lift the next day because people hadn't seen their ads the day before. But it was one day, and probably it was however long it was out, 5 to 8 hours. I didn't even notice it in real time. So I read about it after the fact. So it wasn't one of those that lingered on forever. But I think the important thing is the Frances Haugen's testifying, the whistleblower. I hope that will have bigger ramifications. And I think, the way that the press chooses to cover a story always, I try to be understanding to what people are saying. Mark Zuckerberg issued a statement that I think most people didn't like, but I probably personally understood where he's coming from, at least in some of it. It seems there is a disconnect between the way it's being reported and how some of the people within Facebook, and I've got friends who work there as well, so I know that's their point of view too, how they view things. Nevertheless, it's obviously a huge issue, the impact that social media and Facebook in particular, Facebook and Instagram, have on our psychological well-being, on politics, on the relationships between family members, on all these hot-button topics, and something has to be done. And so I do want to hope that they're working on it. It's frustrating to hear that they are putting growth and profit above making sure that happens, because they're going to make a lot of money anyway. So I hope that part will actually change for the better. But like I said, it's deja vu. We've had this conversation before.
Yeah, we certainly have, and it's getting tiring. But it's just like this week in particular seemed to bring it into stark focus. Jarelyn, when we look at the situation, it not only hit Facebook's weak point where they're always getting hit, which is that Facebook is destroying society, which you can either believe or disbelieve. You can get on that bandwagon or not. But they're also getting hit in terms of their advertisers because of this whole situation with so much of the advertising dollars for most companies being situated on either Facebook or Instagram. And having all that revenue disappear overnight shows a weakness in the planning of these media buys, that somehow they need to diversify more. And is that going to hurt Facebook in any kind of meaningful way? Or is that just going to be a temporary situation where people are grousing, but they'll go right back to the platform? I mean, what's your take on all of this? You can tackle either of these topics. I mean, it's such a malaise. I don't even know where to begin.
Yeah. The first thing I thought about was how many of our brand planning goes directly to Facebook and Instagram. However, I also thought about I'm an immigrant, so I speak to a lot of my friends on WhatsApp, and one of the people I speak to is my mom, and I had to actually text her from my regular messages app. We don't have iPhone, so there's no FaceTime. So I'm looking for her number and realized I hadn't used the messaging app in years. Because WhatsApp was also down. I was like, hey, Mom, you won't get me it seems as if Facebook is down. That means WhatsApp's down, Instagram also. And we also don't think about people who use Facebook to authenticate websites, because there's a particular website that I use with my Facebook login. I don't even know the password to it. And that was also inaccessible. So while Facebook is down, brands should really think about where they can diversify digitally, because we can't rely on just advertising dollars just on Facebook. And yes, I am an avid Facebook user. I went on Twitter that day, and I was like, I don't have a large following on Twitter, but hey, Facebook down. I'm back.
I know so many people relied on Twitter, and Twitter was the big winner in all this because of all the positive buzz that came about as a result of everybody moving over to that platform. But I'm going to go to the ultimate Twitter hater, Lisa. It's just like Twitter is still Twitter. It's not a good replacement for this. And it's something that Jarelyn said that really stands out is that something I hadn't considered, the fact that so many people rely on Facebook sign-in. Sign-in was down, so you couldn't get into anywhere where it was using Facebook.
Right. Now, first of all, this brought me back to when the pandemic first hit. We're an ad-supported network, and I lost 60% of my advertisers in 1 week. So what did I learn to do? I learned to diversify. So when I took a look at this, what should, direct to consumer advertisers take away from this experience is they should not be on one platform. They should be using Google Ads. They should be on Facebook. They should be on Twitter. But, more importantly, they should look around, especially these small to medium-sized businesses that use it. And they should be really using platforms that can reach out to people within their own communities. For instance, we have Podium on Twit that's a sponsor, and they can text customers and people can communicate with them on a completely different platform that's, first of all, not tied into any of these social media platforms. So what I think brands really need to do, small to medium-sized businesses and things along those lines, they really should stop being one-dimensional and being on Facebook or even Twitter or Instagram. That's kind of one-dimensional in my eyes. So as far as I'm concerned, I think they should really take a look around and go, okay, if I lost 70% of my business week over week because of one little outage on Facebook, then perhaps I shouldn't have all of my business on Facebook, and I should really take a look and see what else is out there in the full landscape of everything and find different opportunities. So that was my takeaway, was it's time to not be one-dimensional on one platform.
That's great advice, and it's what a lot of the magazine articles, boy, how old am I? The articles that I was reading this week were saying the same thing. There's a real diversification problem. But Tim, there's also the diversification problem that all of digital is being called into question pretty much. I mean, it's just like with so many things like the whole threats from Google constantly that they're going to end cookies, what the impact of that's going to be, what the impact of tracking on phones is going to be, considering Apple's moves in that direction, the fact that email is being called into question because they're not going to be able to know open rates anymore, at least not on the Apple platforms. So it sounds like there's more going on here than just the fact that Facebook may be in trouble. And that, when I say trouble in Facebook, I always take that with a grain of salt, because Facebook's not in trouble. I mean, they dominate so completely. I can't see how any of this is going to affect them in any kind of meaningful way. They might lose $1 billion here or $1 billion there, but when you're talking about a company that makes as much money as they are, it's not really concerning, is it?
No, it's not. I mean, maybe we could all be safe and just move all of our money over to TikTok, and we'll just put the investment over there. I think, to your point though, Bob, with all of digital being called into question, it's the same thing though. It's not going to go away. I mean, we're never going back to the way it was. We're never going to just do some big TV commercials and reach everybody the same way and not worry about whether or not we're measuring it or being able to optimize it and all that. It's going to change. And change is what's been happening pretty massively just over, the time that I've been working in this industry. Every year is completely different than the year it was before. And how Facebook operates now is different than the way it operated. And we get hooked on the crack of some of the data and the ability to track people and follow them around. We might lose some of that. That's going to be a natural part. But then there'll be something else, and we might not even be able to predict exactly what that is yet. But the industry is not going to stop innovating. They're not going to stop coming up with other options. And within one platform's ecosystem, whether it's Amazon or Facebook or whoever, they're going to take less of a hit than when you have to track the cookies across, multiple places. So I think, it'll just change, but we're going to be reliant on it and constantly adapting to however it adapts. And as long as we can keep riding that wave ahead, I think we're going to be fine, to be perfectly honest.
Lisa, there's one thing about the whole whether Facebook can survive this thing, which is all BS anyway, because Facebook will survive. But when you're talking about Facebook in particular, Facebook has... I've lost my train of thought. I have no idea where I was going with this, but...
No!
It happens, age. But...
No, well, at least let me save you a little bit. The more I've had this discussion so many times this week, we've covered it all over our own network. I'm sure that everyone's tired of hearing about Facebook, but I really feel if you're going to go after Facebook, you have to go after everyone. You can say, oh, they're the biggest, so we're going to go after them and their algorithms and how they serve and do everything. But then you really have to go after everyone. And here's my problem. I don't see anybody in the Senate and Congress that really understands how technology works at a level to really tackle something like this. So it almost has to be done like on an outside fringe. Maybe they pull together a tech panel to help, educate them or something along those lines. So I don't think any of these tech giants are going away. I think they move too fast. I don't think our political system is educated enough to do really anything about it.
And thank you for saving me.
That was the whole SNL skit the other day where they just asked basic questions about how social media works.
See, and I didn't even watch it. It's so blatantly obvious. You know what I mean?
Some of the discussion and coverage was so cringeworthy. I was like, oh my God, what decade are you from? Like, you don't understand social at all.
Some of it
well, as long as they put a stop to Finstas, we'll be okay.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
I do think that, the issue, and Bob, I don't know whether you were going this way, but I thought maybe you were with your question, is I think it's their audience. If they're never going to get shut down externally, but I do think there's a giant danger in that young people don't seem to like being on Facebook, and I've got younger kids, and they don't want to be on Instagram either. So.
That's exactly it.
That's exactly
it. That's exactly it. That's exactly where I was going with this. This whole idea of Facebook cannot be replaced until something replaces Facebook. I mean, it's as simple as that. I mean, MySpace dominated so completely until Facebook came along. I mean, Yahoo dominated so completely until Google came along. I mean, there's just the need, this vacuum to be filled. And I'm wondering, does that improve anything, Lisa? Does that improve anything for us? The fact that, if Facebook needs to be killed by a Facebook killer, will Facebook's killer be any better?
I don't know. I think you might see micro social platforms pop up. I don't think you're going to find anything that appeals to everyone. I personally have gone off Facebook. My son's only on it. He's 18 for family. I don't see a lot of his friends into it. And they're becoming more and more fragmented. So kind of like, I feel like our media, you've got Netflix, you got, Amazon, you can consume almost anything. Nobody's watching the same thing anymore. Where if you went back 20 years, everyone watched the same thing and they were talking about it. So I think if more social platforms start cropping up that maybe appeal to different people, I think you're going to see it become more fragmented. I think the most important thing for me that I'd like to see happening moving forward is the misinformation, the false information being shared and spread around on any of these platforms, regardless of what it is. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I really don't know what it'll be, but I don't think it'll be another big thing. I think it'll be quite a few smaller things that'll appeal to just different people. That's my consideration anyways.
Well, it's a good consideration and one we should keep in mind. But I want to talk next about something else that's been hot in the news, something that's been kind of coming up over and over again in my feeds this week, at least, because of some big news in the space. But non-fungible tokens, or NFTs, have been hot for a while. They're getting hotter. It continues to grow. Basically, these things are any digital object. I mean, basically, it can be a digital icon. It can be digital art. It can be something like this. Unique pieces of digital art are selling for hundreds of thousands of real dollars using this blockchain technology. And of course, brands are now wanting in. They want to get involved with this. There's already talk about things like freelancers using this as a means of a rating system or something, so that you don't have to rely on reviews from clients. You get this system that kind of verifies all the data and all the information. Jarelyn, could you explain the basics of NFTs for the audience? I'm not sure if you're the expert, but you seem to be. What are the opportunities you see for marketers in this space?
So I was curious if brands want in because it's the hot new thing, because many of us do. And I'm truly happy when freelancers, especially artists, can thrive in their craft. However, what brands should probably be concerned of is the energy cost and carbon footprint that comes with validating the authentication.
That's what I was thinking about too.
Yeah,
I mean,
because mining takes a great deal of energy. And also, full disclosure, I did attempt to create one. Yes, Bob, I am not the expert, but I went through the process. But I am a bit concerned about the impact and the benefit of the cost. And I did lose some money while mining that I wasn't aware of. And some people don't realize that. But NFTs has been around for years. And it's just that investors and companies are making it a big spectacle. But if you're going to virtue signal about climate change and energy costs, then maybe this is not a place you should be. But you have to be also careful about how, if you're purchasing real artwork on the digital artwork, there's risk of like cyber criminals copying NFT tokens, people buying fake ones, wash trading. There's fake accounts that pump up the price. And I know I'm explaining this to your audience, but I'm sure many are still confused about what an NFT is. So just know they're not like stocks or Bitcoins, and people have to be willing to pay for it. So the thing is, yes, to answer your question, it's a great opportunity for freelancers, but it's only they're making that thousands of dollars and getting a contract that shares that profit from the NFT. However, no one is preventing others from mining that freelancer's work and selling it to other buyers.
Oh, yeah, you're absolutely right about it. I mean, it's just like so much of this information about NFTs is just completely over my head. I mean, I understand blockchain technology in a rudimentary form. I'm not a guy who knows the inside and outside of it, but I understand blockchain technology. I understand about Bitcoin. I understand the whole concept of setting up a unique token that is worth something. But it seems even more frivolous than anything that that Bitcoin can ever be accused of. I mean, at least Bitcoin is a currency, whether you agree with it or not. But this is just, I mean, I was about to say the ultimate sin of creatives. I was about to say it's just art, but that's not. I mean, art.
But it really is. It is art, Bob. I mean, that's actually its closest analog is art collecting, and there's always been a bit of. How much did they pay for that painting?
Right.
Or, that ripped Banksy? It's just it's taken out at a more mass scale, and then you have to add the gold rush mentality to it that's happening right now. Because to say that there isn't a bubble here is ludicrous. I mean, like people. I actually have a friend. I had to knowing this topic was coming up. A buddy of mine posted on Facebook, connecting the two topics. That he's like, I'm so bad at crypto that somebody made me an offer of $51,000 for his NFT, but he didn't know how to log in, so he ignored the email. I was like, what? and he's doing it, and he is an artist, and I know a lot of artists that are out there, and you shared that article about a Frank Miller piece, the comic book artist, selling for close to $1 million, I think. The thing is, it's art, and it will only hold its value if somebody else in the future is willing to pay more for that.
Correct.
Right? And so how far can that go forward? I don't know who's buying these things anyway, other than people that think it's going to go up, and it's the gold rush.
And also, you have this token, to show that you're owner. So it's basically like a deed. Who cares if you can just send that digital file anyway to anyone else?
It is like artwork, right? I mean, I could take a picture of it, or you could buy a print, and that's different than owning the original. And I think that's the closest thing.
Because if you didn't know, I have an original Picasso, and you can come to my home and see it. Thank you. No, you can come to my home to see that. But if I have a photo of Picasso that I'm just sending to you, what is the point of that?
Yeah.
I think brands I think it's another way to license, though, because if you take a look, like NBA is making a fortune. They have their NBA Top Shot for their NFTs. And kind of like the gold rush, I think the people that are going to be making the money are the people that are coining the NFTs. They're winning. It's these people. It's like the people selling the Pixes and the jeans. Levi Strauss is a multi-billion-dollar company now because they sold it to the gold rush people. They've just developed them. So I think it'll be interesting to see what happens. I do know quite a few people that have bought these and have sold these and are doing quite well and have made some money in it. So it's interesting to see what'll happen. I see brands jumping in. I think it's just another way to license brands and art. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with it. But I agree, it costs. It takes a lot out of our environment to make them.
Mm-hmm.
And also wondering who actually makes the most out of this, because what happens if they're not hosting the digital pieces anymore? What happens? Do the tokens no longer exist?
I think it has to. It's a blockchain ledger, right? So I think there's no way to delete it.
Yeah, it's a distributed network. Anything with blockchain involves all the computers that are on the network, each having a ledger on it. So, I mean, the authenticity that's given as a result of this is what's important. And Lisa brings up a really good point about the licensing opportunities, because, it's not just the fact that you can send this image anywhere, because you can. This image can go anywhere. Anybody can have this image, but only one person can license it, and only one person can make it, valuable in that space, because they are the owner of it. And that's an interesting concept when it comes to art. I mean, digital art has always suffered in some respects from this kind of situation where it's not unique because it's digitally created, and you can send that digital code anywhere, and someone else can have that art if they put up the setup the same way. I mean, I've seen digital art displayed at art galleries with monitors, and it's just like all you need is the code and you can reproduce that art elsewhere. But it's just like, but it's unique in the fact that the artist installed it, made it what it is, and you own this. So you have the right to sell it. You have the right to license it. You have the right to make money from it, whereas nobody else does, whether you have it or not. Is that a valuable enough story for artists to consider getting involved with this? Is that a strong enough story for collectors to think about it in a different way?
Well, think about it. Oh, go ahead, Lisa.
Oh, no, I just going to say, I just know artists that are creating it and they're selling it for hundreds of thousands of dollars and people are buying it. So to me, I'm keeping my eye on this because I know a lot of people that have made a tremendous amount of money over the last 10 to 20 years and artists that have done super well. They're very successful and they're out trading in this world. And I'm a little skeptical with myself, but it's interesting to see how many people are actually diving in. And a lot of them are people I respect. So I'm kind of curious to see where it'll go.
Yeah, as an artist, I absolutely want to get in, but I definitely have concerns about the energy cost. That's only yeah.
Well, and it's I use a gold rush metaphor because it's a good metaphor. A lot of people got rich in the gold rush.
Yeah.
But a lot of people didn't, and a lot of people were left, having crossed the country with debts and, destroyed their lives from it. I think I just don't think there's any way for the amount of NFTs that are being bought now to keep growing and sell in the future. Right. I do think marketing, if you look at the opportunities for marketing, I wonder, Coke, for instance, there's been lots of brands that have created NFTs at this point. And I think it's for the right brand, if there's almost a fashion or art aspect to the brand where they're going to have that big of a fan, you can see that being something people would want. But it's interesting. So what happens if somebody owns that now, and that's a Coke thing, and you own that? Could you do stuff with it that the brand wouldn't like, or is it no different than owning there's back when I was in high school, there was lots of Coca-Cola T-shirts. That was a big thing. Is it no different than just having a name on a T-shirt, and you could still do something that the brand wouldn't like? It'll be interesting to see what sort of things that means. What aspects are you giving away when you are selling somebody this piece of your brand? Is it just an execution? That's all it is, or is some of the brand tied up in it?
For me, let's just get right to brass tacks in terms of what the biggest problem with all this is, which is the fact that blockchain does not work as advertised. I mean, that's the biggest problem underneath all of this. Blockchain is effective at doing these transactions, at making it legal in terms of making it undeniably yours. It's a unique identifier that has never been cracked. That's fantastic, but it is so expensive, and it's getting more expensive every single year to run these servers because the larger the ledger goes, the more cycles have to be processed, and the more this is going to continue to get worse until the entire globe explodes under the weight of all this, energy being exhausted. I mean,
Facebook doesn't look so bad now, huh?
Yeah, it doesn't. There's no solution for it. There is a point in time where blockchain doesn't work anymore because the ledger is too big. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah.
I mean,
we're gonna wait. Lisa has the tech network.
Well, this is just a little out of my expertise for me to make too many comments about. I actually did my prep work with Leo Laporte this morning to get some help on some of these. But yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things that I want to keep an eye on and just watch and see. But like I said, I know a lot of people in this, and they're very happy to be in it. And I'm very skeptical still, so I'm not ready for it.
Yeah, I think to what you were saying, Bob, my understanding, and my understanding is probably worse than Lisa's, but is I think that's true for things like Bitcoin, where the ledger has gotten big. But I think if you start something new, the ledger is smaller again. I don't think they build on top of each other. I think they're independent. So when
but
the ledger for an NFT, I don't know.
No matter which way you slice it, though, whether or not you're starting with a small ledger, your ledger will eventually get big. There's an end point where you don't have the computing cycles to make this happen, or the energy energy constraints become too vast, and it just becomes a real problem. I mean, as powerful as the blockchain is, there is a fatal flaw in it, and nobody wants to address that. I mean, they talk about the environment and the energy and everything, but nobody talks about what about the end game here, where the ledger gets too big. I think that's the biggest problem in this that nobody's been able to address. Well, moving on, it was a big week for climate action as well, with Greenpeace, among other brands and creative professionals, working on agencies now to end fossil fuel representation. Specifically, they're going after the creatives within those agencies, trying to bolster support, and a lot of creatives are jumping in and getting involved with it as well. Lisa, is this a reasonable approach? Could it work? Does it make sense? And how should we proceed as an industry when it comes to the fossil fuel industry?
I say we have to do something. I mean, if we don't jump in now, honestly, if you take a look around, I'm in California, we're on fire. Every time we turn around, there's no water here. You go back to, the East Coast and you're getting hit with torrential hurricanes. So it's really hard to hide this from people. People are becoming very aware. It's not just in the United States, it's everywhere, that this is happening and we have to do something. And with the fossil fuel industry is, they're greenwashing everything when it comes to climate change. I'm seeing like Chevron commercials saying, oh, we're giving back, we're doing this. I think we need to do this in a big way. I think we need to hit them hard. I think everyone as a marketer and an advertising agency should be challenging everyone they're working with to see what they can do to get on board with going after these giant, industries that are saying, oh, we're okay. It's okay to be here. The reality is it's not, and it's time for everyone to go green. We need to be looking at solar. We need to go away from fossil fuels. We need to quit digging up coal out of the ground. We just have to stop. And I'm fine with going after marketing companies and really, putting a stamp down saying that it's time to change. And if we stop promoting them and we start showcasing them for what they are, we can then go after those solar companies for dollars. And yes, are they as big as oil companies? No, but the oil companies have only been around for 100 years. It's time for that to change and for people to hold them accountable. And I kind of wish people would quit calling this climate change and global warming. It's really pollution. Let's call it what it is, because when you make it these other names, people are like, it's no big deal. It's really nothing. And the reality is, it is. Humans are looking to become extinct from this planet. And, it could happen in my lifetime if we're not careful. I thought it would be my son's generation or maybe next behind him. But honestly, with everything accelerating, we have to do something. So Greenpeace is making a stand. People are joining them. I'm on board with them. I'll be honest with you. When people come to us and they're an agency, they're asking us what we're doing to help with climate change and how we're combating pollution. And, we're doing our part, too, in this out in the real world, and we're a small company of 15 people, but I think it's time. And I think that if people are backing these oil companies, it's time to stop backing them, and it's time to start doing the right thing. And is that a tall order? I think so, but I think as more and more people will stand up, we have to do something to change. So I would like to see that happen. We
did a story a couple of weeks ago about how people are targeting creatives more often than not now in their effort to get change within the agencies. I mean, basically the executive leadership at these big agency and holding companies, they're not going to move away from this, multi-billion-dollar client. They're going to keep on to it as long as they can. So starting from within the ranks seems to be the latest, newest strategy. But Jarelyn, is that fair? I mean, it's just like, I know that we each have to do our part and we each have to take our stand. But when somebody is just working to try to make ends meet, and it's just like, and they're getting hit because they're suddenly working for a company that deals with the petrochemical industry in some way, shape, or form. I mean, that's, I'm wondering, is that the right approach? Is that the right ethical approach? Or should these big activist groups be going after, the people who are making the decisions at the companies rather than the peons who are just working to try to get the work out.
I really think that no matter who you are, speaking up can help you create change. And I mean, it is always a risk. And I know that as just in my career, like from experience, that speaking up takes a lot, but someone has to. And if it's us as creatives, we have to. Because again, as Lisa said, this is accelerating and it's going to affect me. And I'm actually from like a small island in the Caribbean, and I've lived through so many hurricanes, and I've seen I've just seen them intensified over the years. And I came to New York never thinking I would experience a hurricane here. And I have a couple of them. And
a couple of really bad ones, quite frankly.
Yeah, quite bad ones. And I'm like, oh yeah, I've been in the Caribbean and this is a lot worse. But like, wow, here in New York, I never imagined I've ever experienced a hurricane here. But this is an issue. It's going to affect all of us. It is affecting all of us. We have to speak up about it. And creatives, we get things done. So we can do it here too.
That's a good way of putting it. I mean, it's just the fact that everybody's voice counts and it matters. I think there's a reasonable argument to the contrary as well, but it's like at the same time, you got to start somewhere and you got to make these actions take place.
Yeah. And absolutely, it can be risky, but we have to.
Well, right. I mean, and you can say that on any number of social issues that we've been having to deal with over the last decade or so. I mean, just people standing up, taking action, whether it's the Me Too movement or the Black Lives Matter movement or just anything to do with the climate. I mean, it's just like all of that takes grassroots support to make an action. Another big story on the climate front this past week, Google also got in the game, moving from their banning of anti-vaxxer material, which we talked about last week. Now they're banning all climate change deniers this week. Lisa, smart move, good move, or is it an overstep?
This is a smart move. I want to state, looking at when we go back to when Donald Trump took office, and this man just lied and lied and lied. And we still see in politics where people lie all the time, and there's no consequences for lying. There was no consequences the whole time he was in office. Even now, people still lie in politics, and that isn't happening. I give my hat off to Google for stepping up and doing this. Is it perfect? Are they going to make sure they vet every article correctly? No, I think it's going to take time. They have to go through their algorithms. They have to check the content and everything. But yes, I honestly salute them for doing this because it's time we take a stand. People should not be posting misinformation about vaccines, politics, definitely, the climate change problem. And I think it's a big and bold move to make, but I think it needs to happen. And it's interesting. I've talked to a few journalists. I go, how do you feel about this? Because I'm definitely not a journalist. I know journalists don't like it when people stick their noses in things and pull out, things that they feel are disinformation. And I haven't found one person that said they're against it. Do I think it'll be perfect? Probably not. It'll take some time to get, the algorithm correct with Google. But for the most part, for me, I think it's a perfect stance, and there now needs to be consequences for lying. And if people are going to be publishing incorrect information that we know is flat out, false, we need to address it. And I'm very proud of them for doing this. Do I think it's perfect? Probably not, but it's a first step. As Jarelyn said, we need one person to stand up, and if more and more people stand up, we're going to actually see a change happen.
We do have to see that. I mean. The internet is the cause of so much of this misinformation that goes on out there, and hopefully it can be the solution as well. Because there's either two ways it can go, right? This truth not mattering. There's a better way to even explain that, and somebody has coined it, and I've forgotten what it is. But like this world we live in, where the truth just doesn't seem to matter to anybody, that can either just perpetually get worse, and that's the world we're going to live in, or there's going to be a point 10 to 20 years from now where we look back on it the way we look at hippies in the 60s, and we talk about that time when it was like that for a little while until we got it fixed. And I'm more inclined to believe we're going to see the latter happen. I think there will be a reaction. It will be even our kids who just won't stand for the truth to not matter. And so it's got to start somewhere.
I got to play devil's advocate just for the sake of, bringing a little controversy to this conversation instead of having everybody
as long
agreeing.
as it's the truth.
Well, I mean, I'm going to ask the same question I asked about the anti-vaxxer question. Like taking all anti-vaxxing information off of the Google platforms or off of YouTube in particular in that case, I understand the purpose, but it's by mixing in someone's opinion as being just as bad as someone spreading lies and misinformation, that's two different things. I mean, if someone's skeptical about getting a vaccine, then that should be allowed because that's free speech. It's when you're spreading lies that it becomes problematic. And I'm going to say the same thing about climate change. I mean, it's just like if people want to stick their head in the sand and just talk about it's not happening, that's their opinion. But if they're spreading misinformation and lies about it, that's a whole different story. Is there a line, a delineation that needs to be maintained in order to at least preserve the illusion of free speech while trying to squash down misinformation? Or is that just too hard for any algorithm to figure out?
I forgot who said something recently I came across. Like, freedom of speech does not equal freedom of reach. Some of the loudest voices could be anti-vaxxers and climate change deniers. And we can't allow that because I'm sure some of these scientists and nurses and doctors who's working on these things, like on all these COVID patients for the past year, aren't the loudest voices to show what's happening. It's these anti-vaxxers now. I'm like, our hospitals are being overrun. Please get vaccinated. And some people are doing their research. And when they're doing their research, they're coming across these anti-vaxxers on Google. So I don't think that's fair when we who work in healthcare, because I work in healthcare, who are trying to push out these communications to say, hey, this is the vaccine and this is how it works and this is the science behind it. Here's your research. You don't have to Google and find this misinformation. But people aren't getting to our healthcare publications.
Yeah, and it's your point is well made, Bob, because I do think we live in it. There's thanks to social media, if you speak your mind behind something that isn't meant to be correct today, people jump all over it, and it creates a place where you actually can't have a discussion about it. Mm-hmm. And that is not going to be good for society at large long term. At the same time, there is a pretty big difference between when something is an opinion versus a fact. And if it can be backed up as this is a fact, this is proven, versus this is your opinion. And I think it's fair to challenge things even and do it in a way that isn't getting on a soapbox and spouting nonsense. And there's a pretty big difference between the soapbox people that get up there and say, this is all a great conspiracy, COVID doesn't exist. I mean, stuff that is just flat out a lie, not an opinion, versus I'm curious about this aspect of the rollout. This seems to be happening, and I have a question about. I can't even think of what it is because I believe in vaccines. So whatever it is, that it's not that there might not be a point. I mean, there even with as much crazy stuff as I would hear Trump say, there would be the occasional thing I would agree with him on, and the occasional, just occasional. Yeah. But it's like you aren't allowed to even agree because we've chosen sides. You have to be on whatever side you're on. And I think if we could just get back to a discourse where we're allowed to, have a discussion about these things and believe in different things, but not believe in different facts. And that's something we hear said a lot. Like, you can have your own opinions, you can't have your own facts. Yeah. If Google can just get the algorithm to figure that part out, that'd be great.
I give them credit because the reality is we let things go for so long, where so much misinformation, so much garbage was posted, and they weren't doing anything. To now, I think Google's like, okay, we're going to be extreme. We're doing this. And I agree with you, Bob, that people should have opinions. You have a right to your opinion. There's things like that. I think you will see over time, you will see things open up where, like, there could be opinion conversations here, there could be here, but it should be marked as opinion. It shouldn't be marked as fact. If people are putting out misinformation, it needs to be out there. So what I think you're seeing is these social media companies are clamping down now because they let it go for so long. And I think we're in uncharted territory. You got to remember, Facebook is as huge as they are now. Google's as big as they are. So now I think people are like, oh my God, look, we didn't do anything for these 4 years that this, I won't swear, was in office, but so much misinformation and lies were allowed to be thrown around that I see some of these companies retracting, going, okay, we're going to make a hard stand in the line. That's what Google's doing here. And I think it's going to take time to work itself out. But having let it go for so long, it's okay for me to see a few stakes go in the ground. Let's just see what happens after that goes, So that's my 2 cents on that.
Really good points. Really good points, all. I got one last topic I want to hit before we wind down. It's the Twitch hack. Apparently, Twitch also had a bad week. They were hacked. A lot of information was released. In particular, Lisa, what was most interesting to me was all the payments that were made out to creators were kind of leaked out. And it was also, the other interesting fact about the leak was that it was kind of positioned as being part one and that there's much more to come. So talk to me about this. What's the impact? Is there any impact? Is this any kind of newsworthy subject that we should even be paying attention to as advertisers?
Oh, I would be paying attention to it. Well, first and foremost, in the short term, it looks bad on Twitch. They got hacked. They're on, Amazon servers. Ooh, that looks kind of icky. But the long term is, I think this really shows other content creators, hey, we can make money. Everyone's information that was posted, they're like, woohoo, look, I'm number one. Believe it or not, the Twitch community cared a little less about, they had to change all their passwords, et cetera, et cetera. But I think the long game here for people that are looking at Twitch is that, wow, we could really make some serious money on this platform. And I think it will actually work out for them in the end versus the short-term impact of, oh my gosh, I had to change everything. They put all this information out there. Can we trust them? Amazon does own them. So I think it's kind of a mixed bag. It's a little bit of a hot mess in my eyes. That's what I took away from the Twitch hack.
Are you suggesting, and maybe I'm just hearing stuff into what you're saying, but it's just like, are you suggesting that maybe Amazon could have arranged this? Because if it is positive for Twitch in the long run, that everybody's kind of more excited about how much money creators are making on the platform, and it's going to attract more creators to the platform, and it's going to be ultimately good for Amazon, is there a case to be made? Anyone going to agree with me that this could have been arranged by Amazon to begin with?
Wow, I didn't think that, but I would say I don't think they planned on it, but why not capitalize on it now that it happened? But then again, let me give it to Tim and Jarelyn. See what they have to say.
Well, I was just thinking about the conspiracy theories and the topic we.
I know. Here I am, like spouting off another conspiracy theory, but it's not a theory; it's just a suggestion.
It could be. You never know with these companies. I wouldn't expect that was the case, but
yeah, me either. Wow, that's threw a wrench in it because I was just thinking, like, because of this hack that now there's the security issue that comes with it. Like, that's super dangerous. But Bob, I never really thought about it that way.
Well, it's always a possibility when you're talking about the man with the penis-shaped rocket ship, but I'm not really sure whether or not it's the case or not. Well, it's time for this week's Fair, Fail, Foul. But before we get to that segment of the show, I do want to take this quick opportunity to thank my guests again and allow them to each do a shameless plug, starting with the inevitable. I was going to say some really weird word like inimitable. There we go. I got it out. Lisa Laporte. You can find her at twit.tv where she is the CEO. Tell us what's going on in your world, Lisa. What would you like to promote?
Well, just if you're looking for, tech news, tech information, please check us out at twit.tv. We launched a new feed called Tech Break. So if you just want your tech news in smaller bites, please subscribe to it.
And I'm sure longtime listeners have heard me gush about the Twit Network in the past. It's, been an inspiration to me over the years. It's when I first started getting podcasting is one of the first networks I listened to. So I'm a big fan of that network that you got over there. So I hope everybody checks them out and starts listening.
Thanks, Bob.
Now, next up, we have Tim Leake. You can find him at rpa.com. That's the home of RPA, the agency in Southern California, where he is the Chief Marketing and Innovation Officer. Tell us what's going on in your world, Tim. What would you like to promote?
Well, so you should definitely check out RPA.com and everything the agency is doing. But I'd love to promote my wife's company for a second. We've been talking about small businesses and advertising on Facebook and Pinterest. And so I have been deeply immersed in my spare time on helping launch this. She's been on Etsy for several years and in retail stores, and she sells little gifts that are a combination of crystals and air plants. And you can find her site at rocknairstudio.com, which is ROCKNAIRSTUDIO.com. And I hope you like it and subscribe to the email newsletter, because we're trying to get that up and running so we pay a little less Etsy fees and keep momentum going. It's great gifts for the holidays. You really should start shopping now, because the post office is going to be horrible this year.
Yeah, and it's just like, and gifts from Etsy are probably going to make a lot more sense considering the supply chain issues that are going on for the bigger companies having to work through this.
We hope so.
So hopefully people will be turning to Etsy more often.
It's been great. We've doubled sales every year for the last 3 years, so it's
that's fantastic.
Time to pop.
Now, last but not least, we have Jarelyn O'Donnell. I can't tell you where to find her. She has some websites that she's involved with, because she does have a consultancy. She does do artwork. She has a book that she put out. She's involved with lots of little projects, and of course, this big super secret project where she's the director of design. So we'll wait to find out more about that. But tell us what's going on in your world, Jarelyn. What would you like to promote?
So yes, they can buy my book, and it's under my maiden name, Jarelyn Thomas. However, I'm actually trying to hire some talented product designers who are passionate about accessibility and want to work in the healthcare space. So if you love helping people and love beautiful UI, email me. I'm looking for senior product design and junior product designers, Jarelyn@designlady.com. You can also follow me on Instagram @commuteartist. So please reach out. Especially, I really love this space in healthcare because, again, I focus on accessibility. It has a lot going on. We work with AI, augmented reality. It's just really cool to push innovative work.
Yeah, I'm big on accessibility too, considering my accessibility problem. So that's really great work. You're doing good work there, Jarelyn.
Thank you, and I'm trying to make the world better for the future for sure. Because I'm getting older too, Bob.
Don't remind us. As for me, for more information about me or the show, visit thebeancast.com. There you can find a complete show archive. You can find out how to consult with me. And of course, you can find out how to advertise on this program. So check it all out at thebeancast.com. And now it's time for this week's Fair, Fail, Foul, a rundown of the best and worst of advertising, marketing, and public relations from the last week. First up, Jarelyn, Dave & Buster's took the banana for scale meme to epic proportions this past week. Basically, they have a video wall that's about 50 feet long that they show games on the weekends, I assume, or during the weeknights. And they brought out a 49-foot balloon banana to show to try to do that whole, banana for size type meme. I thought this was pretty darn clever, the way they did it and kind of the impact that it had, and the fact that people were taking pictures of it just like they take pictures of bananas next to cats. So you have a banana for scale.
Yeah, I love spectacles, and this was perfect because I probably would have been also that person taking a picture of a banana, and then my friends would have came along and take pictures of the banana, and we'd use that QR code and that advertisement would have worked. So I am all for it. I thought it was really funny, and it worked.
Now, the question is, if someone takes a picture of it and makes it into an NFT, whose NFT does it belong to? The problems with photography. Now, the fail of the week I'm going to give to the new Coke gaming ad. Lisa, did you see this? Did you take a chance to look through this ad?
I did.
It's so convoluted. It's like this long trip through Staten Island on the way to Manhattan. It's just like you go through this.
I watched it, and frankly, here's my problem. I'm all fail. I actually loved it, and then when I checked it out on YouTube, gamers hate it. Lots of thumbs down. They were really upset about it. So to me, I think it's actually going to be a win for Coke because they're announcing something else on October 11th. And they're really pushing that. So I agree. It was a little like, are you kidding me? This took a while to get there. However, it was thought-provoking enough to make gamers stand up and notice it. There's a lot of buzz going around about it. So I think it might actually turn out to be a win for Coke.
For me, I just kind of look at it and go, gamers, as soon as they showed the one game character helping the other game character, and it was we're all together, and it's kind of like a digital age version of I'd like to give the world a Coke suddenly. It's like, I can see why gamers hated it.
They hated it, but they talked about it, Bob. I mean, sometimes bad press is good press.
Yeah, well, there's always that. There's no bad press, but sometimes there is bad press. Talk to BP about that.
Just disappointed that we can't all give people Coke right by this time. And also Jeff Bezos can afford a Coke for everyone.
Yes, he can. I'm sure he'll serve Coke in his penis-shaped rocket when it goes off again, so we'll see what we can do. All right, the foul of the week I'm going to give to the Amazon search mechanism that dilutes search relevancy in favor of cheap knockoffs. There was this great story this week, Tim, about how Amazon search is delivering its own ads and its own promoted materials more often than not, and totally burying the brands that created products. And this is a real problem for brand awareness, especially considering the fact that Amazon dominates search when it comes to searching for products, for searching for specific brands. So what's your take on this?
Yeah, I was really glad to see that somebody's making something of it, because I've been noticing it for a while myself. And I'm trying to think of the most recent one. It might have even been like ordering Nespresso capsules or something like that. I'm trying to think of all the stuff I order from Amazon sort of regularly. Like, you type it in and you get all these listings for something else. I'm like, no, it's pretty clear on what I typed in, and yet you aren't showing me that. And it was even worse when I just needed to get some whatever the CN95 masks, right, were running out, so we needed new ones. I'm looking for some that will actually fit my kids because the regular kinds are too big. Oh my! There's like 18,000, and they all. They treat the ones with 5 reviews as much as they treat the one as they rank them up as high in my feed, or whatever you call the results feed, as much as the ones with 25,000. And now there wouldn't be a brand behind that, I suppose, other than 3M, which never pops up anyway. But the just the fact that it's creating a poor user experience, to my mind, that's very un-Amazon. And I'd be surprised if they let that stick around much longer, because they have always been, whatever other issues you might have with Amazon, they have been the poster children for thinking in a people-centric way, in a customer-centric way. And if it's going to make the user experience better, they tend to do that, because in the long run, that is going to be more beneficial to them. So I'm glad somebody's pointing it out, because I do think it's a poor experience for their customers. I've certainly experienced it where I wish I could remember what it was. There was something specific where I typed in what it was. I wanted that product, and it just wouldn't give it to me.
Yeah,
and I eventually found it a different way. Like, maybe I Google searched it and then got it in that way, but literally Amazon wouldn't give it to me with typing the name and whatever it was I was looking for.
That's problematic. I mean, when I look at even Google doesn't allow you to squat on someone else's brand name. And that was kind of this whole story smacks of something from 2009 or something. I mean, it's like forever ago that we were dealing with Google allowing brand squatting, and suddenly, Amazon's caught doing pretty much the same thing and burying brands as a result.
It's kind of like shopping at Marshall's or Ross, where you have to dig through stuff again. And I don't want to do that either. I have that same problem. It's like, this is not why I come to Amazon. I want to get what I want, and I don't want to have to dig through all of this crap to get to it.
Yeah.
Yep. I had to go look at my Amazon orders to remember what it was. It was a Norelco shaver. That's what I was looking up. I was looking up a specific Norelco, and it kept giving me other stuff. So exactly to your point, I was looking up a brand, and it wouldn't give me the one I was looking for.
Yeah.
Well, have a suggestion for this list or just want to discuss it? Comment online. Use the hashtag #FairFailFoul. That's #FairFailFoul. And that does it for this week's show. If you'd like to subscribe to this podcast, visit our website at thebeancast.com and click on the subscribe link. If you're an Apple Podcast listener, we've also provided a direct link to our listing there, or just search for the BeanCast in the podcast directory on the Apple Podcasts app. And whichever podcast directory you use, when you subscribe, please leave us a review. Got a comment? Have a question? We'd love to hear from you. Just send your emails to beancast@gmail.com. Opening theme was performed by Joe Seibel. Closing theme by C. Jax. Thanks for listening. I'm Bob Norp. We'll be back again next week. Hope you'll join us then.
You know what I mean? It's like if it's, you know what I mean? I don't know, man. Just like, okay, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like totally like that. It's like, I don't know, like if it's, you know, it's like, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's just like kind of, it just seems like it's just like almost exactly. It's like exactly. Yeah. You know what I mean? Exactly.
Cool beans.